Hello and welcome to India Reads. We are reading My Early Life by Rabindranath Tagore. We're just going to start chapter 6. We've read a little bit about his schooling days, his experiences at home, the veranda around his house, his experiences with the servants of the house, and so on. Let's start with the normal school, which is chapter 6. While at the Oriental Seminary, I had discovered a way out of the degradation of being a mere pupil. I had started a class of my own in a corner of our veranda. The wooden bars of the railing were my pupils, and I would act the schoolmaster, cane in hand, seated on a chair in front of them. I had decided which were the good boys and which had. Nay, further, I could distinguish clearly the quiet from the naughty, the clever from the stupid. The bad rails had suffered from so much of my constant caning that they must have longed to give up the ghost had they been alive. The mere and the more scared they got with my strokes, the worse they angered me, till I knew not how to punish them enough. None remain to bear witness today how tremendously I tyrannized over that poor dumb class of mine. The wooden pupils have since been replaced by cast iron railings, nor have any of the new generation taken up their education in the same way. They could have never made up the same impression. I have since realized how much easier it is to acquire the manner than the matter. Without an effort, I had assimilated all the impatience, the short temper, the partiality, and the injustice displayed by my teachers to the exclusion of the rest of their teaching. My only consolation was that I had not the power of venting their barbarities on any sentient creature. Nevertheless, the difference between my wooden pupils and those of the seminary did not prevent my psychology of being identical with that of its schoolmasters. I could not have been long at the Oriental Seminary, for I was still of tender age when I joined the normal school. The only one of its features which I remember is that before the classes began, all the boys had to sit in a row in the gallery and go through some kind of singing or chanting of verses, evidently an attempt to introducing an element of cheerfulness into our daily routine. Unfortunately, the words were in English and their tune quite as foreign, so we had not the faintest notion what sort of incantation we were practicing. Neither did the meaningless monotony of the performance tend to make us cheerful. This failed to disturb the serene self satisfaction of the school authorities at having provided such a treat. They deemed it superfluous to inquire upon the practical effect of their bounty. They would probably have counted it a crime for the boys not to be dutifully happy. Anyhow, they rested content with taking the song as they found it, words and all, from the cell from the from the self same English book which had furnished the theory. The language into which the English resolved itself in our mouths cannot be but edifying to philologists. I can recall only one line: Kaloke, Puloke, Singil, Meleng, Meleng, Meleng. After much thought, I had been able to guess the original of the part of it. Of what words Kaloke is a transformation that still baffles me. The rest, I think, was full of glee, singing merrily, merrily, merrily. As my memories of the normal school emerge from haziness and become clearer, they are not the least sweet in any particular. Had I been able to associate with the other boys, the woes of learning might not have been seemed so intolerable. But that turned out to be impossible. So nasty were most of the boys in their manners and habits. So in the intervals of the classes, I would go up to the second story, and while away the time sitting near a window overlooking the street. I would count 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, wondering how many such would have to be got through like this. Of the teachers, I remember only one whose language was so foul that out of sheer contempt of him, I steadily refused to answer any of his questions. Thus, I sat silent throughout the year at the bottom of the class, While the rest of the class was busy, I would be left alone to attempt the solution of many an intricate problem. One of these I remember on which I used to cogitate profoundly was how to defeat an enemy without having arms. My preoccupation with this question, amidst the hum of the boys reciting the lessons, comes back to me even now. If I could properly train up a number of dogs, tigers, and other ferocious beasts, and put through a few lines of these on the field of battle, that I thought would serve very well as an inspiring prelude. With our personal prowess let loose thereafter, victory should be by no means out of reach. And as a picture of this wonderfully simple strategy waxed vivid in my imagination, the victory of my side became assured beyond doubt. While work had not yet come into my life, I always found it easy to devise shortcuts to achievement since I have been working. I find that what is hard indeed, and what is difficult remains difficult. This is, of course, less comforting, but nowhere near so bad as the discomfort of trying to take shortcuts. While at length a year of that class had passed, we were examined in Bengali by Pandit Vachaspati. I got the largest number of marks of all the boys. The teacher complained to the school authorities that there had been favoritism in my case. So I was examined the second time with a superintendent of the school seated before the examiner. This time also I got the top place. We move on to chapter 7, various learning. One of the teachers of the normal school also gave us private tuitions at home. His body was lean, his features dry, his voice sharp. He looked like a cane incarnate. His hours were from 6 to half past 9 in the morning. With him, our reading ranged from popular literary and science readers in Bengali to the epic of Meghnadvanda. My third brother was very keen on imparting to us a variety of knowledge. So at home, we had to go through much more than what was required by the school course. We had to get up before dawn and, clad in loin clothes, begin with a bout or two with a blind wrestler. Without a pause, we donned our tunics on our dusty bodies and started on our course of literature, mathematics, geography, and history. On our return from school, our drawing and gymnastic masters would be ready for us. In the evening, a Gore Babu came for us for our English lessons. It was only after 9 that we were free. On Sunday morning, we had singing lessons with Vishnu. Then, almost every Sunday, came Sitanath Datta to give us demonstrations in physical science. The last were of great interest to me. I remember distinctly the feeling of wonder which filled me when he put some water with I can't read it in it on the fire in a glass vessel and showed us how the lightened hot water came up and the cold water went down and how finally the water began to boil. I also felt great elation the day I learned that water is a separate part of milk and that milk thickens when boiled because water freezes itself as vapor from the connection. Sunday did not feel Sunday like unless Sitanath Babu turned up. There was also an hour when we would be told about all human bones by a pupil of the Campbell Medical School, for which purpose a skeleton with bones fastened together by wires was hung up in our schoolroom. And finally, time was also found for Pandit Tattvaratna to come and get us to learn by rote the rules of Sanskrit grammar. I'm not sure which of them, the names of the bones or the sutras of the grammarian, were more jaw breaking. I think the latter took the palm. We began to learn English after we had made considerable progress in learning through our medium of Bengali. Agore Babu, our English tutor, was attending the medical college, so he came to teach us in the evening. Books tell us that the discovery of fire was one of the biggest discoveries of man. I do not wish to dispute it, but I cannot help feeling how fortunate the little birds are that their parents cannot light lamps of an evening. They must have their language lessons early in the morning, and you must therefore notice how gleefully they learn them. Of the time, I had always thought the whole man Did I get? Yeah. Of the time, I had always thought that the whole man spoke had never ever imagined the art of speech could be viewed in such a detached way. However wonderful the mechanism of a part may be, it is certainly less so than the whole man. Not that I put up myself in so many words, but that was the cause of my dismay. It was perhaps because the tutor had lost sight of the truth that the pupil could not respond to the enthusiasm with which he was discoursing on the subject. Another day he took us to the dissecting room of the medical college. The body of an old woman was stretched on a table. This did not disturb me so much, but an amputated leg which was lying on the floor upset me altogether. To view man in such fragmentary way seemed to me to be so horrid, so absurd that I could not get rid of the impression of that dark, unmeaning leg for many a day. After getting through Pierre Sarkar's first and second English readers, we entered upon Maclock's course of reading. Our bodies were weary at the end of the day, and our minds yearning for inner apartments. The book was black and thick with difficult words, and the subject matter could hardly have been more inviting. For in those days, Mother Saraswati's maternal tenderness was not in evidence. Children's books were not full of pictures then as they are now. Moreover, at the gateway of every reading lesson stood sentinel, an array of words which separated syllables and forbidding accent marks like fixed bayonets, barring the way to the infant mind. I had repeatedly attacked their serried ranks in vain. Our tutor would try to shame us by recounting the exploits of some other brilliant pupil of his. We felt duly ashamed and also not very well disposed towards that other pupil. But this did not help us to dispel the darkness which clung on to that black volume. No sooner did our English lessons begin than our heads began to nod. Sprinkling water into our eyes or taking a run on the veranda were palliatives which had no lasting effect. If by any chance my eldest brother happened to be passing that way and caught a glimpse of our sleeping, tormented condition, we would get let off for the rest of the evening. It did not take our drowsiness another moment to be completely cured. We've reached the end of chapter 7. Let's move on to chapter 8. Chapter 8, The Professor. On leaving the normal school, we were sent to Bengal Academy, a Eurasian institution. We felt that we had gained an access to dignity and that we had grown up, or at least into the first story of freedom. In point of fact, the only progress we had made in that academy was towards freedom. What we were taught we never understood, nor did we make any attempt to learn. Nor did it seem to make any difference to anybody that we did not. The boys here were annoying but not disgusting, which was of great comfort. They wrote "ass" on their palms and slapped it on our backs with a cordial hello. They gave us a dig in the ribs from behind and looked innocently the other way. They dabbed banana pulp on our heads and made away unperceived. Nevertheless, it was like coming out of a slime onto a rock. We were worried but not soiled. This school had one great advantage for me. No one there cherished the forlorn hope that the boys of our sort could make any advance in learning. It was a petty institution with an insufficient income, so we had one supreme merit in the eyes of the authorities. We paid our fees regularly. This prevented even the Latin grammar from proving a stumbling block, and the most egregious of blunders left our backs unscathed. Pity for us had nothing to do with it. The school authorities had spoken to the teachers. Still, harmless though it was, after all, it was a school. The rooms were cruelly dismal with their walls on guard like policemen. The house was more like a pigeonhole box than human habitation. No decoration, no pictures, not a touch of color, not an attempt to attract the boyish heart. The fact that the likes and dislikes form a large part of the child mind was completely ignored. Naturally, our whole being was depressed as we stepped through its doorway into the narrow quadrangle, and playing truant became chronic with us. In this, we found an accomplice. My elder brothers had a Persian tutor. We used to call him Munshi. He was of middle age and all skin and bone, as though a dark parchment had been stretched over a skeleton without filling of flesh and blood. He probably knew Persian well, his knowledge of English was quite fair, but in neither of these distractions lay his ambition. His belief was that his proficiency in single stick was matched only by his skill in song. He would stand in the sun in the middle of a courtyard and go through a wonderful series of antics with the staff, his own shadow being his antagonist. I need hardly add that this shadow never got the better of him, and when at the end he gave a great big shout and at the whacked, whacked it on the head with a victorious smile, it lay submissively prone at his feet. His singing, nasal and out of tune, sounded like a gruesome mixture of groaning and moaning coming from a ghost world. Our singing master Vishnu would sometimes chaff him. Look here, Munshi, you're taking the bread out of our mouths at this rate. To which the only reply would be a disdainful smile. This shows that the Munshi was amenable to the soft words, and in fact, whenever we watched, we would persuade him to write to the school authorities to excuse us from attendance. The school authorities took no pains to scrutinize these lessons. They knew it would be all the same whether we attended or not, so far as educational results were concerned. I have now a school of my own in which boys are up to all kinds of mischiefs, for boys will be mischievous and schoolmasters unforgiving. When any of us are beset with undue uneasiness at their conduct and are stirred into a resolution to deal out condemning punishment, the misdeeds of my own school days confront me in a row and smile at me. I now clearly see that the mistake is to judge boys by the standard of grown ups. We forget that a child is quick and mobile like a running stream, and that in the case of such, any touch of imperfection need no cause no great alarm, for the speed of that flow is itself the best corrective. When stagnation sets in, then comes the danger. So it is for the teacher more than for the pupil to beware of wrongdoing. There were separate refreshment rooms for the Bengali boys for meeting their caste requirements. This was where we stuck up a friendship with some of the others. They were older than we. One of these will bear to be dilated upon. His specialty was the art of magic, so much so that he had actually written and published a little booklet on it, the front page of which bore his name with the title of professor. I had never before come across a schoolboy whose name appeared in print, so my reverence for him as a professor of magic, was profound. How could I have brought myself to believe that anything questionable could possibly find place to the straight and upright ranks of printed letters? To be able to record one's own words in indelible ink, was that a slight thing? To stand unscreened and unabashed, self-confessed before the world, how could I how could one withhold belief in the face of such supreme self-confidence? I remember how I got the types for the letters of my name from some printing press, and what a memorable thing it seemed when I inked and pressed them on paper and found my name imprinted. We used to give a lift in our carriage to this schoolfellow and author friend of ours. This led to our visiting terms. He was also great at theatricals. With his help, we erected a stage on a wrestling ground with painted paper stretched over split bamboo framework. But a peremptory negative from upstairs prevented any play from being acted thereon. A comedy of errors was, however, played later on without any stage at all. The author of this had already been introduced to the reader in these pages. He was none other than my nephew Satya. Those who behold his present calm and sedate demeanor would be shocked to learn of the tricks of which he was the originator. The event which I am about to narrate happened sometime afterwards when I was 12 or 13. A magician friend had discovered on so many properties of things that I was consumed with a curiosity to see them for myself. But of the materials which she spoke were invariably so rare and distant that one could hardly hope to get hold of them without the help of Sinbad the sailor. Once, as it happened, the professor forgot himself so far as to mention accessible things. Who could believe that a seed dipped and dried 21 times in the juice of the species of cactus would sprout and flower and fruit in all in a spate of 1 hour? I was determined to test it, not daring withal to doubt the assurance of the professor whose name appeared in a printed book. I got a gardener to furnish me with a beautiful supply of milky juice and betook myself on a Sunday afternoon to a mystic nook in a corner of the roof entrance to experiment with the stone of a mango. I was wrapped in my task of dipping and drying, but the grown up reader will probably not wait to ask me the result. In the meantime, I little knew of Satya. In another corner had, in the space of an hour, caused to root and sprout a mystical plant of his own creation. This was to bear curious fruit later on. After the day of this experience, the professor rather avoided me, as I came to perceive. He would not sit on the same side of the carriage and altogether seemed to fight shy of me. One day, all of a sudden, he proposed that each one in turn should jump off the bench in schoolroom. He wanted to appear the differences in style, he said. Such a scientific curiosity did not appear queer in a professor of magic. Everyone jumped, so did I. He shook his head with subdued him. No amount of persuasion could draw anything further out of him. Another day he informed us that some good friends of his wanted to make our acquaintance and asked us to accompany him to their house. Our guardians had no objection, so off we went. The crowd in the room seemed extraordinarily inquisitive. They expressed their eagerness to hear me sing. I sang a song or two, mere child as I was. I could hardly, I could have hardly have bellowed like a bull. Quite a sweet voice, they all agreed. When refreshments were put down, they sat around and watched us eat. I was bashful by nature and was not used to strange company. Moreover, the habit I acquired during the attendance of our servant Ishwar felt me a poor eater for good. They all seemed impressed with the delicacy of my appetite. In the fifth act, I got some curiously warm letters from a professor which revealed the whole situation, and here the curtain fell. I subsequently learned from Satya that while I had been practicing magic on the mango seed, he had successfully convinced the professor that I was dressed as a boy by our guardians for merely getting me a better schooling, but really this was only a disguise. For those who are curious in regard to imaginary science, I should explain that a girl is supposed to jump with the left foot forward, and this is what I had done on the occasion of the professor's trial. I little realized at that time what a tremendously false step of mine had been. Okay, with this we end chapter 8, and let's review whatever we've read. Tagore talks about the end of Oriental Seminary and the beginning of normal school. It seems like he had a very regimented, rigorous schooling and tutoring, starting early in the morning when his elder brothers would wake him up, and he would go through a round of exercise, or rather wrestling with a blind wrestler, practice with a blind wrestler. Then they would come back, immediately dress up and do a little bit of reading at home, then go to school, come back. While they were back, there was an art teacher waiting for them, there was a gymnastics teacher waiting for them. They would finish that, and they would basically be done only at 9, because there was an English tutor who would come after the gymnastics teacher and the art teacher went away. So this was like a pretty packed, regimented life, and this possibly is made him the kind of man that he is, interested and knowledgeable about various things. But at that point of time, I guess he would have loved to get some time off. Apart from this, weekends he would get a little bit of time off. They were obviously interested in a lot of things. Tagore's initial schooling was in Bengali, and later he learned in English. So from here he moved to the normal school from the Oriental Seminary, and then he moved to a good institution for his higher studies. Uh, his knowledge of Bengali was quite good, and he was generally a good student. There were two things they were studying at the same time. One was Sanskrit sutras, is what they call, and the other was experiments in science, like understanding the bones and looking at dissection through a corpse, a body. And so Tagore didn't know which one was more boring, because he found both of them to be exhausting, but nevertheless he suffered through it. And when the time for exams came, Tagore's grammar and Bengali were too good, and he topped in the class. And the teachers had a bit of doubt, because he would always sit quietly in class, he would not answer much, because he found it very painful. So the teacher said that he would have to take a re-examination, with the superintendent of the school watching him when he takes the examination. Even then, Tagore topped in the examination. Now after that, in the last chapter, Tagore talks about some of the people in his life at that point of time in the Bengal Academy. That's the higher study school that he went after the normal school. He knew one guy who taught him magic, or who was called the professor of magic. He had published a booklet, and everybody was impressed, because here was one student among them who had his name printed on a piece of booklet, and he was called a professor. He tricked Tagore about some kind of magic, where he said that you put in the seeds and it becomes a plant. Immediately Tagore kind of believed him, and he planted a mango. He got his servants to get him all the equipments, maybe mud pot, and put it together. And he kept watching, because he was expecting, as his friend the professor had said, that it would bear leaves and fruit in an hour or so, but that did not happen. And so Tagore kind of realized that he was duped. And yeah, that's an incident in his life. I don't think I missed out anything interesting or important. So this is Tagore's early years and his friend. With this, I'm going to stop today's reading. We will continue with the next chapter in the next video. Till then, take care. Goodbye. Do drop your comments in the comment section below. I will see you in the next video. Bye.